This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Connecticut has thousands of farms that span nearly 400,000 acres. And unlike massive farms across the country that only grow a single type of crop, many are small farms that have more diversified produce and specialty crops. The average age of farmers in the state is 58, just under the national average. Over 90% of senior Connecticut farmers don't have a younger person tapped to take the reins. This is according to an American Farmland Trust study. Coming up, we'll hear about efforts to inspire interest in farming early by exposing kids to agriculture in and outside the classroom. But first, we check in on the 2023 Farm Bill currently working its way through Congress. And here to discuss is Lisa Hagen, who is the federal policy reporter for the Connecticut Mirror and Connecticut Public Radio. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today.
Hey, it's great to be back.
And for our listeners, you can also join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So I want to start this conversation by first describing a little bit about the Farm Bill. So it's this package of legislation that's revisited and tweaked every 5 years, governing a variety of agriculture and food programs, and in large part, food stamps as well. So with that tee up, Lisa, what can you tell us about the bill, where it concerns farming this time around, and any efforts to expand this very important population? And just one more note, too, to clarify, new farmers are defined by the U.S. Agricultural Department as farm operators that have been up and running for under 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Farm Bill, it's a very important bill that I think gets kind of swept under the rug when we're thinking about Congress, but it's pretty wide-ranging. As you said, it's renegotiated every 5 years. The last time Congress looked at this was 2018, and really an overwhelming majority of it goes towards nutrition aids. So looking at SNAP benefits, which used to be referred to as food stamp program. And so basically the rest of that goes towards agriculture and conservation programs. And so I think I'd seen a figure that this upcoming Farm Bill might be like over 80% going to nutrition. So again, vast majority of it, but still millions and billions of dollars going towards agriculture. And so it's still kind of in the beginning stages at this point. Money is going to start running out from the 2018 bill in September, but they're basically at this point, lawmakers are holding hearings. They're meeting with stakeholders, and some lawmakers, including some in Connecticut, have started to really start submitting legislation that they'd like to be included in the Farm Bill.
And nutrition, of course, plays a huge part of this bill, and land access is also crucial as a part of these negotiations. So, Lisa, I want to ask, why is this so central to the discussion of expanding the pool of new and young farmers here in the U.S.?
Yeah, Connecticut's really in a unique position, and you alluded to this at the top, is that it's just different from a lot of these states across the country, especially in the Midwest, that are commodity farmers. And so they have thousands and thousands of acres, and they're working on a lot of the times just one crop, so soybeans, wheat, and corn. And Connecticut's just really different than that. I think I'd seen average size of farms is around 69 acres. So again, very different. They're also working on more specialty crops, just diversified produce just all around. I've spoken to farmers who grow flowers and herbs and vegetables and fruit. And so it's really different. And again, we're talking about a different climate. We're talking about a much smaller state. And that's kind of where land access comes in, because it's just being able to find this viable farmland. And again, a lot of this is owned by multi-generational family farms that have just had it in their hands for sometimes, again, centuries. And so it's these new and beginning farmers, the ones who've been doing it for under 10 years, that are trying to break into this. And they're trying to find access to land, access to capital. And that's just tougher in Connecticut, especially with a real estate market that's very competitive. And you're also, basically competing with housing developers.
Well, and because you mentioned the uniqueness, which shouldn't be that surprising considering Connecticut is a much smaller state, but it's also like you just said, a lot of land is owned by generations of families. So can you talk about the general difficulties too of wanting to acquire land, especially for younger farmers? And are you hearing what our farmers also hoping will change?
Yeah, a lot of them are just trying to lease land, or they're trying to actually own the land. And so being able to find it is just really tough in general. There's a specific program in the state that people have kind of compared to a dating matchmaking site. And so you're being able to partner up people who owned vast amounts of land and to be able to hand it off to someone who's interested in farming it. And so there's programs like that. There's also farm service agency loans. But some farmers have told me that while it's really helpful to kind of get people to break in and be able to get pre-approved for a loan, it's a slower process than a traditional conventional loan. And so just breaking in is really tough sometimes. And so they're doing their best to find any amount of land that they can farm. And so that's why they're looking to the Farm Bill to try to really assist in the transfer of land and also the preservation of viable farmland.
And along those lines, a different kind of transfer might be happening because there is an ask for $2.5 billion to help transfer 1 million acres of land to the next generation, specifically to young and BIPOC farmers. So can you tell us more about that? And also just to clarify that BIPOC, the acronym stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is the 1 Million Acres campaign that's really been pushed by the National Young Farmers Coalition, and again, a chapter within Connecticut as well. And so it's wanting Congress to spend billions of dollars to transfer basically 1 million acres to the next generation of farmers. And so it's something that Congress might be able to push through some of that money. And so I guess taking a look at legislation that's actually on the table is Congressman Joe Courtney in the 2nd District's land access bill. And so it's not going to quite meet that threshold, but I think it's going to try to accomplish what that campaign is trying to do. And so that would authorize about $100 million each year between a period of 4 years. That would help expand programs at the Department of Agriculture, but it would basically provide direct assistance. So you would see things like help with closing costs, down payments, subsidized interest rates. So it's just really trying to just plow money into helping new and beginning farmers try to get their start in agriculture.
And now we want to bring in a local farmer and also president of the new Connecticut Farmer Alliance, Liz Guerra. She's also the owner and operator of Cimarron Farmstead in Danbury. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining us this morning. Liz, are you there? Liz might not be there, but
Thank
that's
you.
oh.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And so
you okay?
Yes, I think so. We'll give it a go and we'll see what happens. And so, you've been listening to the conversation and we've just talked about the Farm Bill just now. So want to ask, what are your hopes for it? Because we also know there were some local Alliance members who flew down to Washington to push for land access.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was one of them. So it was myself, Willow Muir with 100 Reaper Farms, and Susan Mitchell with Clover Farms. And yeah, so we're like spread across the state. We've all brought our really different perspectives, being young farmers or some of us aging out of that young farmer bracket. And Lisa had mentioned some really important points that are really unique and specific to Connecticut. We're young farmers, right? So accessing farmland has been it's been super difficult. It was difficult pre-COVID, certainly difficult in this time period. And our biggest battle is with developers. Our farm is located in Fairfield County, and so it's more lucrative, right? When a developer could come with cash and pay for farmland and make these huge developments, housing developments, and in the meantime, farmers are looking for land. They're looking for land to be able to create their livelihood, expand their production operation, and to be able to farm for people in their community. Well, so certainly access to farmland. Yep.
Right. No, I was just going to say, because Lisa alluded to the idea that it's like housing too, where it's difficult to purchase land or find land. And based on a recent survey from the National Young Farmers Coalition, it did find that land access was the top barrier to entering farming. So what's your perspective on this in Connecticut, Liz? Is it unique to Connecticut?
It's really not usually to Connecticut. So I'm part of this National Young Farmers Coalition Land Access Fellowship, and we're about over 100 farmers from across the country, and it's literally like the number one issue. Myself, in my own specific case, my partner and I, we purchased our farm. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, and now as we're trying to increase our production area, coming across affordable farmland is super difficult. It's almost impossible. And there's all these like government programs that are around in order to help with accessing farmland for farmers, through FSA loans. But we have folks waiting anywhere between 6 to 8 months just to be able to go through the process. And if, oftentimes we end up losing farms because we just don't have the ability to, go through this whole process. And, the seller wants to sell as quickly as possible. They don't have 6 to 8 months to wait to hear back from FSA. So it does pose a huge challenge for us to be able to access farmland using, the programs are created by the government in order to allow us to access those programs as well.
Right. And then talking about land access, we're also talking about how urban farming is also a really important aspect of this as well. But there are challenges there, too, because we know many towns and cities say that they don't meet the definition of a farm, or because of contaminated soil. Even if the farms are on a raised bed, that's not something that can be done. So, Liz, can you touch on this issue? Is this something that you're hearing about?
Absolutely, yeah. So through the Alliance, so we are a chapter of the National Young Farmers Coalition. So the New CT Farmers Alliance. We have members who are, anywhere from rural farmers to urban farmers, and it is in fact a huge problem, right? We have some members who are, trying to access, urban farm or plots, right, and trying to revitalize neighborhoods by taking empty lots and reclaiming them and farming right there and there. It just, there's issues with, local government, right? Whether they're embracing this idea, whether they're pushing back very, very hard on these ideas of urban farming. And certainly, like, once you get past that big jump, right, that big hurdle, then it's actually farming on that land, which can pose, huge issues, right? So certainly, like, contaminated land, so folks are on raised beds. It's, you're kind of between neighbors, right? So trying to figure out, what's the best way in order for you to be able to grow as much food as possible in the middle of like a residential area. And so again, it's, working with within networks here within the state, but also looking at federal agencies who can help allocate monies to help us, help us be able to farm, whether we're in a rural area or urban farming. And I know there have been more monies that have been allocated for specific urban farming, which is great to see, but we need more, right? This is not new. Folks have been farming in urban areas for long periods of time. But now we are seeing, because of COVID and because of, small farms are really what helped people through kind of all this food insecurity, that we need to be able to focus and put, funds for those kind of smaller, urban farms as well.
And Lisa, bring you back in here. We also spoke with the New Connecticut Farmer Alliance coordinator, Mary Claire Whelan, who touched on the importance of health and mental health care for farmers. So let's take a quick listen here.
If agriculture is something that you want to make a career in, it's almost impossible to save the money that you would need to start a farm by working on a farm, even if that's the best way to learn. And so that's a real barrier, I would say, in our industry. And the other affordability piece that I just want to pull out is healthcare being a big challenge for farmers. According to a recent Young Farmers survey, which was nationwide, 40% of young farmers identify healthcare costs as one of their top challenges. And it's one of the main reasons that people quit the industry. So not only is land expensive, not only are inputs expensive, but you're not even able to, give your family and yourself the basic healthcare that you need. Here in Connecticut, we did a survey last year, and according to the 115 of our members that filled it out, only 5% of those folks were able to access healthcare through their farm jobs. And that is crazy. In a country where healthcare and employment are very closely linked together, this represents a pretty huge crisis in my eyes in the agricultural industry. And of course, farmers also have very specific healthcare needs. So farming, I think, is ranked as the 8th most dangerous job in the country. There's emergencies, there's, chronic injuries, and I think there's also a lot of mental health concerns in our industry.
And Lisa, that is so much to grapple with, and you've spoken with a lot of farmers about this bill. Is this similar to what you've heard from producers?
Yeah, I think again, especially these new and beginning farmers are dealing with a ton of challenges. And again, being able to just get the land and be able to afford it is just, again, the biggest hurdle. And that trickles down to everything, being able to afford healthcare. Also, that kind of ties into this as being able to afford your student loans. If this is like a program you did and trying to break into agriculture. And so in terms of healthcare, I don't know if this is something that is specifically how it's going to be addressed in the Farm Bill quite yet. But again, it's a huge challenge, and just being able to get the land and start your business. How are you going to be able to afford basically anything else? And that's, that encompasses healthcare. So, tackling land access and a lot of these other issues that we've talked about just ties into so many other issues and challenges for new and beginning farmers.
And Lisa, one more question for you here, sort of bringing back to what we were talking about earlier. I want to mention support more broadly for BIPOC farmers, given their stark underrepresentation in this field. Data does show that 98% of Connecticut farmers are white. So are you seeing any more support for representation?
Yeah, that's something that I've spoken to a lot and when reporting out this story. And so I'd spoken with a big Connecticut Farm Bureau, and that's a huge issue that they want to push. But when speaking with actual BIPOC farmers, they feel that, especially because a lot of them are doing urban farming. And so I spoke to two of them, Richard Myers and Sean Joseph in Trumbull. And so they feel that urban farming doesn't get maybe the same amount of attention as just farms being started up in more rural areas. And so when you're talking about land access, they want more support for urban farming, and that might, lend more support and resources for BIPOC farmers. So they just want to make sure that they're also included broadly in the Farm Bill.
And Liz, I also want to Liz, I want to bring you back here real quick in response to Mary Claire's earlier point about the need for healthcare and mental health supports for new and beginning farmers. Is that something that you're hearing as well, the need for more mental health support? Liz, are you there? She might not be there. That's okay. We're going to take a quick break here, actually. You can find more information on 4-H programming in Connecticut on our website at ctpublic.org/where we live. Lisa Hagen, federal policy reporter for Connecticut Public and the Connecticut Mirror. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
It was great to join you.
And Liz Guerra, president of the new Connecticut Farmers Alliance, will be staying with us to continue our conversation after a short break. You can also give us a call if you have any questions or a favorite farm that you want to shout out, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. This hour, we're learning about efforts to grow the number of new and young farmers in the country, as well as in our state, where the average age of farmers is 58. Back with us to discuss is Liz Guerra, who's the president of New Connecticut Farm Alliance and owner and operator of C. Marone Farmstead in Danbury. Liz, welcome back.
Hi, how are you all?
You can also join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Liz, I know you were cut off earlier, but I do want to just ask you real quickly. We heard a clip about the need for mental health support for farmers. I would love to get your perspective on that. Is that something that you're hearing from farmers and producers?
Absolutely. So, with the New CT Farmers Alliance, we created this policy platform based on, surveying our members from across the state. And healthcare is super important. Certainly, mental health and mental health needs are super important. It's something that's been flagged by farmers across the state. Farming, it's beautiful work, right? Like, you're connected to the land, but it's also can be really super isolating work. Especially in times like now where climate change is making many of our crops, uncertain, right? And we live on that. We live on, the production of all of our fruits and vegetables and whatever it is that we're making. And so, when we have torrential floods like we do right now, or tremendous drought like we had last year, it can, your livelihood is based on that. And if you're not able to sell your fruits and vegetables, whatever you're producing at the market or wherever, then how are you going to make, your next loan payment, right? How are you going to survive yourself? And so there's a lot that's connected to that. And folks don't really talk a lot about it, because it's a taboo, but certainly more and more as we, kind of dive deeper with our farmers, that's what we're seeing as well. There's a tremendous need. And just like Mary Claire had mentioned earlier, right? It's like there's these mental health needs that folks have everywhere in the country. It's not unique to farmers, but certainly farmers do feel it pretty significantly. And then, of course, other physical, medical health needs that folks have that they shouldn't have. Is people who are producing food for their communities, we shouldn't have those needs as well.
And we will be digging a little bit more deeper with the mental health aspect later on as well. And you mentioned floods just now, too. And we know that Connecticut farmers are dealing with floods as we speak. Some 2,000 acres were reported damaged, according to the State Department of Agriculture. And this is a part of a larger, very much unpredictable seesaw that these farmers are on, because we saw one of the worst droughts last year and then record floods the year before. So, Liz, can you touch on how climate change factors into your day-to-day and also for farmers in the future?
Absolutely. And it's one of the Farm Bill priorities that the National Young Farmers has set out for the Farm Bill. Certainly us as the New CT Farmers Alliance, right? It's, climate, being resilient, right, through these uncertain climate times and climate change. I know for us, we live, kind of typical Connecticut farm, which is like super hilly. Our native plant is rocks, right? So we have like super hilly, rocky land, and we're constantly thinking about best ways in order to keep keep water on our land and also get rid of it expeditiously during times of flood. Trying to figure out what crops we can grow. We had in February, if you guys can remember, it was really, really warm, and then it got really cold, and how that's been impacting some of our plants and our crops as well. And so there's constant need to shift, right? You're constantly pivoting, figuring out what's out there, what you have to move around. And of course, as a network of farmers from across the state, it's, talking to farmers from one side of the state to the other to see what they're seeing, see what they're experiencing, and how we can work things out together.
And you mentioning crops, Connecticut farmers also dealt with an abnormally late spring frost that shocked their crops. And we also just saw that federal disaster funds were just announced. We also spoke with Connecticut Department of Agriculture Commissioner Bryan Hurlburt about how important stability is in seeding the next generation of farmers. Let's take a listen.
There's a need, there's a recognition that we've got to do things a little bit differently in order to have a strong and productive agricultural industry in the state for the next couple generations. And I think that's, as we're talking about the next generation and attracting new and beginning farmers, I think that's key. People aren't going to want to get into farming if they don't think there's a career or a life in it. Right. And if you're at the complete whims of Mother Nature and you're getting 100-year floods every 5 to 7 years, those challenges, in addition to the amount of energy and work and process that goes into being a successful farmer, is a challenge. So having a safety net that says you may fail for no reason of your own, but we will be there to support you. The public policy will be that we want small and diversified farms to be successful across our nation. I think it's got to be one of the biggest discussions in the Farm Bill. So creating the market's important, but we need the safety net there as well. And if we don't have the safety net, then all that effort to build a farm to school market, our food bank program, our farmers market outreach, If we don't have farmers to fill those channels because they can't manage, a year like this year where you had a moderate winter, two pretty traumatic frost events, a drought, and a flood, then it doesn't matter what farm to school money you have available because you're not going to have farmers able to sell into that market channel. And so we really need that a better safety net and risk management tool.
So the commissioner made a lot of points there, Liz. Curious to hear if there are any that jumped out to you, and do you resonate with that?
Oh yeah, we absolutely resonate with that. It's one of those, as a young person, as a young farmer, many of us are career changers as well and coming into this work. And as I mentioned, my partner and I, we purchased our farm, but we still have to pay a mortgage, right? We still have to pay for a home. Not making this work, if this work is not viable, if we can't, have enough in order to be able to survive, then that, in effect, it really does deter people from looking at this work, right, as an actual career path that they can stay in for, decades, and to be able to pass on to, their family or, whomever. It's difficult, right? And especially in a time where, folks have student loans, right? Looking at the decision from the Supreme Court, about student loan forgiveness, like all these different factors. And on top of that, it's also very clear from COVID that it really was a small diversified farms that really were the lifeline for many neighborhoods. We have so many farmers from throughout Connecticut who also they did so well during COVID. Many of them were selling in local farmers markets in their own areas, but also going down to New York City and doing the same and being able to also do really, really well fiscally. But it's also because, they are able to easily pivot. But it's also difficult to do that when, climate is just, precarious at this point. We don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is just plan for the moment and hope that what we planned, it's like the best, our best, it's almost like playing the lotto sometimes. It's like our best guess, and hoping that, we've been able to make the best prediction.
And we were talking about mental health support earlier for farmers, and the commissioner also reminded us that the State Department of Agriculture recently set up a mental health helpline for agricultural workers here in Connecticut, and that is ctfarmstressrelief.org. And he said we do well to consider how farmers are doing and not just farms in moments like these. And I know, Liz, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I want to ask again, why is this so important to have in your view?
I mean, in my view, and also when we're talking about farmers, we're talking about folks who, own and operate these farms, but also the farm workers who oftentimes overlooked. It's important because, the last thing that you want is someone who's not well, right, who needs these mental health supports and don't have the means to access it. Frankly, even finding, mental health professionals who know what it means to work with farmers, that's super important as well. It's almost like a niche that folks haven't really looked into, but it is hard, right? Like we go through these moments of like tremendous stress from about February to November, and then everything's really quiet, and we're supposed to be resting and planning for the next season. And it's tough work, right? It's physically hard on our bodies, but also from a mental health perspective, when there's so many things that are out of our control, it could be really, really challenging as well.
And just a reminder for our listeners that you can also join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Matthew from Portland is on the line now. Matthew, you're on the air.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. What do you have to tell us?
I own a small farm that we just started in Portland, Connecticut. We're going on about 10 acres, which is somewhat bigger than some small farms, but it kind of falls right in the middle. And I just wanted to bring up how farm to institutions is something that the Department of Ag, I think, is beginning to put money towards. And for us on our farm, we find it super beneficial for being able to sell our product and make money on what we can grow. A big thing that we've been selling is the CT Food Share, which is a food pantry food distribution network. And they've got a huge grant of money from the state to buy specifically local food from larger scale and smaller scale producers. And it's been fantastic. And I think that as we move forward here, things like farm to school and farm to hospitals are a great way to kind of encourage smaller scale farms to grow in the state, because farmers markets and direct to consumer sales have their limitations.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for calling in and letting us know your story. We appreciate it very much. And talking about local food sourcing, Liz, thinking about this larger conversation about how more people are doing that, and also with climate sustainability, you and your husband are also hoping that hemp farming and processing can expand in the state. So why is hemp a part of that sustainability conversation, Liz?
So I want to first start by saying that we are hemp evangelists. We feel like hemp is, in a time where there's climate change, it's a totally regenerative crop. And so for us, through research that we've done, looking at other institutions throughout the country, but also throughout the world, who have looked to hemp in terms of being like a super green crop. I was mentioning earlier that we had to our friends that, our land is super hilly, but last year we grew hemp in this one area, and we were turning over the land a few days ago, and the soil was beautiful. You were really, really proud of just the work, and it was, the hemp was able to really put a whole bunch of nutrients back into the land, which is super important in farming, right? You're not nothing if your soil is not good, and so our soil health has been dramatically improved by adding hemp as a cover crop. Also, what we're doing is focusing on hemp for industrial purposes, and so we want to use hemp to create animal bedding, right, as an alternative to what other folks are using for animal bedding. We're looking at hemp for the creation of hempcrete, right? So it's a great alternative to typical fiberglass that folks use as insulation inside their homes. Folks have seen hemp being just like this really, really powerful crop that can give so much and can really change the way that we live. Looking at alternatives, we're constantly looking at alternatives, from making straw to straws for us to drink, right? Clothing that we wear. Hemp really can be used across the board to replace so many of the different crops, or even like the different chemicals and materials that make us dependent on, like petroleum, for example. Hemp really has 25,000 uses, and we're just kind of scratching the surface. We scratched the surface back in 2018 with CBD, and now, there's so many more markets that are opening up, and we really do see that, Connecticut, we're a small state, but we can really see Connecticut be, the leader in the Northeast for hemp and hemp production.
Liz Guerra, who's the president of New Connecticut Farmer Alliance and hemp evangelist. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to have you come back and talk about hemp more next time.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Kat.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, you can also find more information about where to report flooded crops and about some of the grants that we mentioned this hour. Just go to our website, ctpublic.org/wherewelive. And coming up, we're hearing about opportunities where we live for young people to get exposed to agriculture. You can join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. We've been talking about what's been happening in the agricultural world, and here in Connecticut, there are some efforts to expose kids to agriculture. And in addition to the 19 vocational agricultural schools in the state, there has been increasing collaboration between the state departments of agriculture and education, yielding programs like Farm to School, helping connect classrooms and cafeterias with local farmers. Nearly 6 million young people in the U.S. participate in the nonprofit 4-H, and you may have met one of them if you've attended one of the state's agricultural fairs every fall. And the 4-H's stands for Head, Heart, Hands, and Health. Part of the 4-H pledge includes a promise to use these 4 things for the betterment of my club, my community, my country, and my world. Joining us now to discuss is Matthew Syrotiak, who is a 4-H alum and also a young farmer raising dairy goats at his family farm in Bethlehem, and Jen Cushman, who is the 4-H program leader at the UConn's extension program. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
And Matt,
Thank you.
Sure. And Matt, I want to jump straight to you. You've been with us this whole hour and, of course, want to get your perspective on some of the issues that we've been talking about so far. But first and foremost, how did you get started?
Yeah, so great question. So I was 13 years old heading to a local farm to get some chickens. And they had a couple of dairy goats. I had never seen a dairy goat before, and so it piqued my interest at the time. After some protesting and begging, I won over my parents and we picked them up. And one of them happened to be pregnant. And so from that point on, we were very involved, and none of my family had ever been in agriculture or even heard of 4-H. But being able to be involved in a local UConn 4-H club, I quickly learned within a group of youth that shared that passion for agriculture.
I love that you had to protest and beg to do this, Matt. And we cannot have this discussion without mentioning that UConn did a profile on you that we absolutely love that aptly called you the GOAT of goats. And the acronym stands for Greatest of All Time, for those who might not know. And now you help run a family farm raising dairy goats. And it sounds like your family is very much into it. So I know you just mentioned it a little bit, but can you tell us more about that whole experience it's been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we still have the goats on the farm while I'm attending UConn, doing classes up there. My sister, my mom, and my dad all help out. We milk the goats twice a day and make soaps, lotions, cheeses, all sorts of fun goodies. Definitely hoping to get out to some farmers markets and other opportunities to grow.
And we mentioned 4-H earlier, and we know that it's a huge part of agricultural fairs in the fall here in Connecticut. And it's also a really huge moment for 4-H participants each year. So can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, our club always jokes that the moment the 4-H fair is over, one year we start prepping for the next one. It's not just the club, but it's also our county leadership teams that help run the fair. We all learn a lot about project management, meeting those hard deadlines associated with a fair. Members spend all years working with animals or creating a final project in the arts or setting up a display, all to increase their knowledge and also help increase public awareness and knowledge. And it doesn't hurt to see some members get super excited about placing better than they did the previous year and growing from those experiences. It's an opportunity for us to get feedback and to grow.
And, thinking about the issues that we've discussed so far this hour, especially when it comes to young and new farmers, can you talk about the need for more mentorship in a broader space, and why is that so important to you?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned before, I never had any experience in agriculture prior to my time in 4-H. And so 4-H provided me with a place to grow and to make those connections. Working with club leaders who had that background and experience allowed me to grow into the field and to continue forward. Now, as a volunteer myself, I act as a mentor to a lot of members, sharing with them my experiences so we can make them better. The 4-H motto is to make the best better. And so I think mentorship is a huge, huge key in that growth.
And Jen, I want to bring you to the conversation with Matt being a farmer and a mentor as well. How would you say his experience is emblematic of the 4-H program?
Sure. Matt's experience is certainly characteristic of the positive youth development that our UConn 4-H program provides to so many participants. We are able to start youth in 4-H in Connecticut at the age of 5. And we watch them grow and develop through that high quality 4-H program experience. 4-H provides youth with a place where they belong and they're able to explore their personal sparks. In Matt's case, that was through the Dairy Goat Project area and through hands-on learning. He was able to explore all that 4-H and the Goat Project had to offer, but also that experience has provided him with that springboard to pursue a further career around agricultural education and extension work.
And agricultural education is just one piece of 4-H, right? What are some other pieces of 4-H that people might not be aware of?
Yes, so agriculture and STEM agriculture is one component. In addition to the agriculture project area, there are many areas around healthy living. We also have members in robotics, the arts, food and nutrition, areas like photography, industrial arts, and civic engagement and the leadership components.
And Matt, I want to talk to you real quickly too. You recently participated in a national conference for young farmers. Can you tell us about that? Why was that so important for you to be a part of?
Absolutely. So I served on a national leadership team for a conference held in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the National 4-H Congress event. Every year we're elected. I was served alongside 7 other 4-H members from across the country. 4-H is more than just its agricultural roots. It's also very much an opportunity for positive youth development. I would have never had the confidence to speak on a show like this without the 4-H mentorship and guidance that I got. And that conference instilled a lot of leadership in me and the other individuals that I served with.
Well, Matt, I want to say you are doing amazing, not to give you any more stress, but you're doing great. We've also spoke with new Connecticut Farmer Alliance coordinator, Mary Claire Whelan, who spoke about the importance of community among new and young farmers. Let's take a quick listen here.
If you're a first generation farmer and you didn't grow up in a rural area and you're coming to farming, like later on in life, or maybe even as a second career, you probably don't have that mentorship, like that relationship with the farmers in your area where they can help you troubleshoot and they can, you can call somebody up when your cows get out in the middle of the night and they'll help you wrangle them up. And so that's kind of where organizations like mine come in and try to build that network for folks. Because I think, as important as many of the trainings and workshops and programs that we're able to offer people, I just want to make sure that we're offering people a community and we're offering people a space where they are able to connect with other farmers. And so many of our gatherings and social events turn into troubleshooting this cucumber pest, or has anybody met a good well digger in our area who is gonna help me get the irrigation set up that I need. So I feel really passionate about helping farmers connect with each other, and I know that there's a lot of folks in our state who feel that way. It's a pretty small agricultural community compared to, say, Massachusetts or New York, but I kind of find that to be a strength, because if you're looking for a mentor, you can find it. You can join the New CT Farmer Alliance. You can join Farm Bureau. You can connect with UConn Extension and hopefully find somebody in your area who's really willing to help you out.
So I can't say I've really heard about cucumber pests, and I kind of want to know more about it now. But Matt, with what Mary Claire just mentioned, and you talked about community with your conference just now, what are your thoughts about what she has to say?
Yeah, I 100% resonate with that. The sentiment that she had in her remarks, like I mentioned, 4-H provided that community for me as someone who was without an agricultural background. It can be very difficult to try to be involved in this space without that background. So using it as a place to network and also bounce ideas off of each other is especially important as we continue to grow. We always use the acronym for agriculture as AG. I kind of think of that as standing for always growing. And so I think 4-H provides a great space for youth to continue to grow. And the UConn Extension program in general provides a lot of opportunities for that development and for those networking opportunities.
And when we're talking about networking and community, Matt, what would you say is needed now to help sort of bring in new generations of farmers and, I have to say, more goats like you?
Yeah, I'm definitely always looking for more opportunities to spread the love of agriculture. And thankfully, I think 4-H has a really awesome program. We allow youth to lease animals from kind of these larger farms. And so kind of meeting youth where they are at a younger age and kind of giving them that exposure that I think so many of us don't have that same level of exposure to agriculture that we might have used to. And so exposing them young and letting them know what the program's about and sometimes that's all it takes to really get some fresh blood in the field.
And really quickly, Matt, because you saw some goats and you're like, man, I wanna do that. Was there something during this experience that really surprised you?
I definitely was beyond surprised as I continued to grow into the field to learn that there are so many other people just like me who see a goat and are like, yeah, you know what, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I think it's definitely, like I said, 4-H created that opportunity for me to meet others just like me. And in the amount of science behind it as well, I think, you first start working with a goat and feeding it, and then you start thinking about the nutrition of it. And so there's so much more. It's so connected to science and to what I'm learning up at UConn now as an animal science major as well.
Well, I'm sure those animals appreciate your love and care for them, Matt. And Jen, we've got about a minute left, but we'd love to hear about if you have any tips for folks who may be interested in getting involved in 4-H.
Yes. So for those interested in getting involved in 4-H, we certainly encourage you to reach out to one of our county 4-H offices to learn more about local opportunities. And in addition to that, we have our website, and I know that'll be referenced on the website as well. And reach out, find out what local opportunities are. And we also have many opportunities for volunteers to engage and support all of our youth in the 4-H program.
And we'll also have that information linked on our website at ctpublic.org/wherewelive. You've been listening to Matthew Syrotiak, who's a 4-H alum who's now a young farmer raising dairy goats at his family farm in Bethlehem, and Jen Cushman, who is a 4-H program leader at UConn Extension. Thank you so much for sharing both of your stories with us this morning today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
You can find more information on the programming on ctpublic.org/wherewelive. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Katie Pellico. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for listening.